Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to Weaving Worlds. For today's topic, I decided to focus on one of the more useful aspects of a setting when it comes to creating conflicts: secret societies and conspiracies. In this context, at least, a conspiracy is any group of people who are trying to do something that the authorities would want to stop. A conspiracy can be big or small, it can be heroic or villainous, and it can be secretly running the government, attempting to undermine it, or completely bypassing it. But no matter what the details are, by its very nature, a conspiracy adds intrigue and conflict, and it makes your audience wonder what's really going on and what each character believes in. Now, there are a few different aspects to conspiracies, like how they're placed in society, how big they are, how visible they are, and what their goals and methods are. But today's video will be strictly concerned with composition, with the type of people who are conspiring. I may get around to those other topics in later videos, but for today at least, all of that is beyond the scope of the video. Criminal organizations. As far as real-world conspiracies go, criminal organizations are the bread and butter. While other conspiracies may be exaggerated or overblown, crime syndicates are very real, very dangerous, and in most cases, very wealthy. They run protection rackets in areas that the police are unable to protect. They make money by offering services that the government has declared illegal. They make more money by kidnapping people for ransom or by stealing online identities. In some cases, they support their local communities, and in other cases, they only support themselves. Regardless of the details, organized crime can exist in just about any setting that has enough crime to organize. And even if there isn't, you can have secret groups of bandits or cartels prowling through the forests or badlands. Organized crime also tends to be common in and around ethnic minority enclaves, mostly because official law enforcement agencies focus less on protection and more on oppression when it comes to them. This makes crime syndicates both the only form of protection the minority group may have, and one of the few routes available to them to advance out of poverty. And because crime is so universal, you can fit criminal organizations into any setting. Very few alterations required. Intellectual elitists. The Illuminati, the Skull and Bones Society, Mensa. Throughout history, people who at least believe themselves to be smarter than the folks around them have gathered together in order to spend time with like-minded individuals and to exclude those who don't meet their standards. Even back in ancient Greece, there were mystery cults that made a big deal about sharing secrets of the world with their members. Secrets they were prohibited from telling to the uninitiated. Historically speaking, while intellectual societies like these have often been the target of conspiracy theories, for the most part, they've proven to be harmless. They're an excuse for people to feel special, to feel that they're better than others because they know something secret or have some intellectual quality that sets them apart. However, every now and then, these societies serve as smokescreens for political movements, like how the Freemasons were used during the American Revolution as a way for members to discuss and plan the revolution in private. And if members of a society are wealthy and influential, then yeah, they'll use their membership to coordinate with other powerful people. But in that case, the society is mostly just an excuse to socialize, and not very intrinsic to the conspiracy. But hey, an intellectual society in your setting could be a conclave of mages who coordinate what they say to the kings they advise as a way to manipulate public events. Or maybe a mystery cult really does know the mysteries of the universe, and that knowledge gives them power over their bodies or over the physical world around them. Or maybe the Illuminati, as imagined by a conspiracy theorist, is real, and they secretly control the world's governments from the shadows. Or, if you really want to go crazy, maybe all of the above is true. Populist revolutionaries. This is basically the inverse of the intellectual secret societies. Instead of saying that its members are part of a select few, a populist conspiracy tries to say that its members are just like the majority, ordinary people who are sick and tired with the status quo and want to do something to change it. Now, what that something is can depend on the conspiracy. It might support a political ideology like communism or fascism. It might support an independence movement or a pretender to a nation's throne. Or it might want to overthrow the government entirely and replace it with something else. What all of these movements have in common is that they take advantage of widespread discontent and always promise more than what our imperfect reality is capable of delivering. The people who create and organize these movements are either idealists or manipulative politicians, and the people who eventually use these movements to take power are narcissists and psychopaths. And if the government doesn't allow such movements to take to the streets, they also meet in secret as conspiracies. Populist movements are a juicy source of conflict for settings. On the one hand, they wouldn't get very far if the population wasn't angry about some sort of mistreatment or injustice, and often enough, that anger is fully justified. But on the other hand, the people leading these populist movements are typically only worried about their own personal goals, their own power, their own pleasures. And in order to get people riled up and do what they say, they often stoke some very ugly hatreds and prejudices. And so, while the old regime may deserve to be overthrown, the new regime is not necessarily going to be kinder or fairer, and the people at the bottom will end up suffering no matter who's in charge. Agent provocateurs. This one is a bit like the populist movement, but with an extra sinister edge. An agent provocateur is a secret agent who stirs up trouble by provoking the people around them into performing violent or illegal actions. This includes small things like an undercover police officer convincing someone to deal drugs, medium things like throwing stones to make a peaceful protest escalate into a riot, and big things like supplying a rebel faction in a neighboring nation with weapons and training. What this means for setting creation is that nations will often interfere in the politics of their neighbors or colonial prospects, with the goal of either destabilizing them so that they aren't a threat, or else installing a friendly regime that will sell them land, allow themselves to be annexed, or offer tribute and exclusive trade rights. So, when your protagonists close in on the people who are really in charge of a conspiracy, it might just turn out that a foreign power was behind everything. Inhuman invaders. Think of this one as an extra layer of complication to the agent provocateur, one that you can only really find in speculative fiction. In the movie They Live, the protagonist discovers that aliens have adopted human disguises and are using subliminal messaging to keep us passive. The TV miniseries V is an allegory about the rise of fascism in Germany, except that it also features reptilian aliens who love eating human flesh. With the inhuman invaders approach, there is something inherently different and alien about the conspirators. This allows you to put some space between reality and the allegory you're creating, and the concept is so generic that you can center that allegory around pretty much anything. The one big exception would be an allegory about racism. There's really no way to use evil aliens as a racial statement without coming across as racist. Wealthy monopolists. Every now and again, wealthy people will get together to consolidate their control, fix prices to squeeze as much money as they can from their customers, and share tips on how to bust unions, evade regulations, and otherwise maximize profits at the expense of literally everything else. All of that is bad enough, but some folks believe that wealthy bankers and industrialists have even more power and control than what they appear to have. The wealthy don't just make a profit off of wars, famines, and economic depressions, they control when those disasters take place. They orchestrate terrorist attacks to manipulate public opinions, they insert propaganda into popular media to make consumers more compliant, and they rig elections so that the candidate they prefer always wins. They even control the opposition movements, just to keep everything nice and predictable. Well, all of the opposition movements except whichever one the conspiracy theorist believes in, naturally. I believe this sort of all-encompassing conspiracy theory is connected to a very basic need in humans to believe that someone is in charge, even if that someone is malevolent. After all, you can at least understand an evil person. You can understand what they want and predict what they'll do. You can blame them for things in your life that go wrong, whereas random chance is unknowable, unpredictable, impersonal, and therefore terrifying. As for a speculative setting, you can take this concept in pretty much any direction you want. Maybe the conspiracy theories are real, and everything around us is staged to keep us weak and quiet. Maybe the world is ruled by evil or whimsical gods who don't care about the suffering of mortals. Maybe all of the evil of your world is caused by the temptations of some adversary figure and their secret followers. Or maybe the wealthy aristocrats of your setting have created a conspiracy that makes them look like they're in charge, when in actuality, they're just as subject to the whims of fortune as everyone else. Doomsday cults. This goes along with what I was saying about the human need for certainty. There's something comforting about knowing what the future holds, even if that future is all death and destruction. And so you get doomsday cults, which either loudly proclaim that the end times are here, secretly work to bring those end times closer, or both. The rationale for trying to end the world can vary from cult to cult. Some believe that the next life will be a paradise compared to this one. Some believe that those who bring about the end will be rewarded for their efforts. And some think that this world is simply too sinful and broken to go on. Better to just destroy it all and hope that whatever replaces us is better. Doomsday cults are practically a staple of fantasy and horror fiction, so there's not much I need to add about how to feature one in your setting. Still, something you could do to stand out is integrate some features found in real-life doomsday cults. Look at things like millennialist Christians who believe that the world will end within their own lifetimes, and whose memberships got a surge during the Cold War, when it seemed like the world really could end any day. Or look at the cults that offer precise dates for when the world will end. Cults that never seem to lose any steam after the dates pass and nothing happens. There's a lot of interesting quirks out there that you could adapt into your setting. Conspiracies can add an extra dimension to whatever stories or settings you add them to, and they can be a rich source of intrigue, danger, and secrets. But when you go out and do your research, just make sure that you have both of your feet firmly planted on the ground, because conspiracy theories can be a surprisingly tempting rabbit hole to fall down. Thanks for joining me again for today's journey into Weaving Worlds. Please like, share, and subscribe because that raises my visibility here on YouTube. Check out my other stuff if you have some time, support me on Patreon if you have some money, and I hope I'll see you again for the next video.